Okay, now that we have our trim ring on and our latches and our hinges, we're on our final stages and putting our weather stripping gasket on. It's a rubber gasket with a self-adhesive sticking on the back. So what we're going to do, our goal is to run this basically right where our channel splits on our other piece of trim, down inside this groove here. I'll do the best job I can showing you without getting my fingers in the way, but we're going to try and run it way down underneath there like that, all the way, and then we're going to follow this track up right in the center, all the way around here, and then back down. The goal with doing that is to make sure that nothing seeps in behind the trim ring here and into the window. We want to make sure it's a nice airtight seal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our backing off, take about 8-10 inches off here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this back with one hand, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and set this down as far as I can inside here. So it's basically just under the lip of this. So I'm going to try and get my hands out of the way for you here. I'm just going to try and do a little bit at a time and show you kind of what I'm doing here. So you can see it's following underneath here. Okay, we want to keep it nice and level. You can see how it's following right now. And I'm just going to keep tucking it down in there. And I'm not going to be pushing on it real hard yet. I'm just trying to get that down in there. And the one thing you want to make sure is that you don't stretch the material. So now I can look at this and I go, okay, this is up a little bit here, so I can go back, actually tuck this all down using both my forefingers. And I can just line everything up straight. And now that we have it pretty lined up, you can see that you can't see the gasket right here. Now we're going to come back over here and get ready for this corner. Now this corner right here is tricky. Just want to make sure we stay right in the middle of that. And then once we get our corner lined out, we're going to take our thumb and just really get that tape to stick right there. So now that we have that on, and want to make sure that we keep our temperature when we're doing this over 65 degrees, that way our tape really adheres good. So we're going to just line that up, and then we're going to start working our way up the edge here. Okay? So we're going to keep cruising right up here. Now I want to look at it, make sure it's a nice straight line. Okay? I'm going to flip this back over to this side here so you guys can see. Now you can see that right there. We're going to go around this corner. And I'm going to move to this side of the camera here so you guys can see what I'm doing. And basically I'm going to follow that same channel around here, pushing the corners down. Go back and make sure the corners are all set. I'm going to peel more of my adhesive backing off so I can just follow. And you can see you can move it back and forth a little bit. I'm not really hitting it that hard with pressure, so I can make sure my lines are straight. I'm going to come around this corner here. And this molding is pretty nice because it's pretty darn flexible. So we're going to follow this right down here. Now our most tricky corner is this corner right here because it is pretty much a 90-degree corner. So what our goal is to follow this down and then just bend that down, and then we're going to want to try and just set it right down inside there. So I know it's kind of hard to see with my hands, but I'm just going to just bend that right down on it like that. Now I'm going to jump over to the other side again here real quick, because now our goal is to cut this to match so we know exactly where it's at. So I'm going to grab my scissors, and I'm going to measure exactly where I need to be, and I'm just going to cut that right there. Set my scissors back down. And I'm going to come back over here. Now at this point we can take the rest of our backing off. And we're just going to set this down in here, this channel nicely. And we want it to be even. Okay. And we are just going to make sure everything's sitting the way that we want it to. Okay, well now that we have our rubber gasket on, what we want to do, if we're in any type of a colder temperature where we're hovering around 65 degrees, what I would recommend is getting a hair dryer and just taking your hair dryer and just going around this and just heating this rubber up a little bit. Keep your hair dryer, 3-4 inches away from the rubber and just kind of lightly go over it to heat that up so it really makes that adhesive real nice and sticky. and we just want to go around everything, make sure it's on there real nice and good, and just make sure that everything's sitting good on there. Now, of course, we heat that up a little bit, it'll stick really, really well. Okay, so now that we have that done, and this, I'm going to let you know that this is a very tight rubber, so the more that we use it, the more it's going to give. So the first few times you put the window on and take it off, it's going to be pretty darn tight, and that'll loosen up and it'll be a nice perfect seal as it'll mold to the window. So what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to show you on the inside. We're going to flip back to the inside, put all of our panels back together, and then we'll be ready to slide on our windows. We'll be done with this project and ready to enjoy our new FJ Freedom windows. Now that we have the outside trim piece in, what we're going to do is we're going to put our plastic pieces, we're going to push those back into place. On the back side corner here, if you remember we popped this out, what we're going to do is just take our thumb right in this corner and just going to pop it back in. Pretty simple to do. And then on this vertical piece, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to push it back into place. You hear that clip just pop back in, and that leaves a nice tight seal right in here. If you remember this little guy that we took out, this is our push pin. It's our only push pin that came out from the top. We want to make sure that we have this vertically in the front and the back of the vehicle. That way, if we need to get back in there, we can do that with a straight screwdriver. If you notice also, we want to keep this part here up in the top without pushing it down yet. Now this piece here, we're going to squeeze that together when we put it down into the hole to make sure that it gets into that, and then we can clip everything back together. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Now we're on our final piece before we get ready to put our Freedom window in. We're at the top of the door where we had taken that original pin out of the top here. So what I'm going to do with my right hand is I'm going to squeeze together that plastic piece just to make this hole line up here. I'm going to take the plastic pin and I'm going to just line that up like this and just going to push that in just like that. Okay, now when that's into that position, I can make sure that my flat spots are in the front and back like we just talked about. And when I'm ready, I'm just going to push that back into place, and that is pretty much all that we have to do. So now the interior is done. Okay, we are done with our FJ Freedom window install. Our internal plastics are back in, and now as you can see, we are in Freedom mode. This is how your system will look when you first get it done, and what we're going to do now is we're going to show you what it's going to be like to put the window in, put it in vent mode, and then remove the window. So as you can see, we've got our two female hinges that are fixed to the vehicle, and we've got our main support bracket for the latch attached to the vehicle as well. Here is the inside of our window. You can see it has two male hinges on it, which those are going to be going into the female ends here, and they are spaced out about 1/8 of an inch apart, so we can stagger them and start the bottom one first. And before we install this, we want to make sure that the latch here is all the way forward, and this part here is facing towards the center of the vehicle. That way it clears that, that framework when you first put it in. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to turn this around, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a little higher than the window frame. So I'm going to start just like this, and I can actually see through, and my goal is to line up these bolts here with the rivets that I can see on the other side. And once I see that, I can kind of just start to drop it down. What I want to do is put a little pressure on when I'm coming down so it slides in that hole. It's like we talked about, that this rubber on here is pretty nice and snug right now, it's new. And what it's going to do is every time we remove and put on the windows, it's going to break in and to the window and become easier and easier and give that perfect seal. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push this in, line this up on the top and bottom, and I'm just going to slide it down just like that. And the window's on. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to go around the inside. I'm going to show you how to latch it up.